this committee. If I could ask members to introduce themselves, please, starting on my left.
I'm Councillor Scott Emery, Highgate Ward.
Sean Donovan, Councillor, Tottenham Hale Ward.
Amina Ibrahim, Councillor for Knoll Park Ward.
Alex Worrell, Councillor for Stroud Green.
Esther Buxton, Councillor for Crouch End.
Nicola Bartlett, Councillor for West Green.
Councillor John Bevan, Northumberland Park.
Can you just say your name again so it can?
Councillor Cathy Brennan, Councillor for Muswell Hill.
Thank you. And could the officers present introduce themselves, please? Starting on my left.
Nazir Chowdhury, Principal Committee Coordinator and Clerk to this particular hearing.
Justin Farley, Legal Officer.
Rob Sosowski, Assistant Director for Planning, Building Standards and Sustainability.
Robin McKnocker, Head of Development Management and Planning Enforcement.
Roland Sheldon, Planning Officer.
John McMillan, Major Applications Team Leader.
Richard Truscott, Design Officer.
Themselves when relevant, and officers in attendance virtually will introduce themselves when relevant. So we're on to item 1 now, which is filming at meetings. This meeting is being recorded. All registered speakers should be aware that they will be recorded for live or subsequent broadcast via the council's internet site or by anyone attending the meeting. Item 2, which is planning protocol. Members and speakers are requested to note the information set out at item 2 on the agenda. Apologies for absence. We have apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Rice and Councillor Collette. Item 4, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. It's now item 5, declarations of interest. So do members have any declarations of interest, please? Okay, thank you. Item 6, which is the minutes, which are in the pack pages 1 to 36. This is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of July. So are we in agreement? Do we approve the minutes of the 17th of July meeting? Yes, okay, thank you. And the minutes of the 1st of August meeting are to follow. Item 7 is planning applications. So we will now consider the planning applications, which moves us on to item 8. And that is the College of North East London, pages 7 to 146 in the pack. I'm not going to read out the proposal. I assume that you've all read that. I will hand over to the planning officer to introduce the application, please. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. So this is an application for demolition of the existing gym lecture theatre block and erection of a Part 4 to 5-storey building comprising of 2,625 square metres to host the new construction and engineering centre at the Cornell College. So the red line of the site in the aerial image indicates that it only covers part of the College of Haringey, Enfield and North East London College campus in Tottenham. The red line comprises of the service access off the Town Hall approach road, the existing gym lecture hall itself, and part of the surrounding courtyard to the south of the existing gym lecture hall. The college is located on the high road immediately adjacent to Tottenham Green. So this is a policy overlay map. The site is on the boundary of the Tottenham Green area of change as designated in the Tottenham Area Action Plan. and forms part of the western edge of the Tottenham Green Conservation Area, which is indicated in yellow. The statutory listed old fire station and town hall buildings are located to the immediate north of the site, as you can see in blue. This is some aerial images of the site. So the building in question is the 3-story building here. You can see where my cursor is, located immediately to the rear of the town hall tower building within the college. The existing engineering and construction building is located to the immediate west of the site, but is actually outside of the red line. The old firemen's cottages buildings are located to the immediate north, which are now in commercial use. So just some site photos from within the site. The first photo on the left shows the building as viewed from the southwest corner of the site, showing the 3-story scale and the existing first floor link to the tower building. The second photo shows the southwest corner of the existing building and its current linkage into the main college building. Third photo shows the service lane in the site looking towards Town Hall approach. So the proposed development seeks to demolish the existing gym and lecture theatre, comprising of approximately 1,050 square metres, with the erection of the Part 4 to 5-story building in its place of 2,625 square metres to house a new School of Engineering and Construction. The building will provide double height workshops on the ground and first floors that accommodate bespoke training facilities for construction trades, including plumbing, plastering, electrics and brickwork. There'll be cantilevered classrooms provided on the upper floors with breakout areas for student collaboration. The existing gym facility that's within the existing building has been moved into the main building during the summer recess. So the development forms the first stage of a wider illustrative master plan that seeks to rationalise some of the older building stock within the 2 courtyard areas of the college and move their facilities elsewhere than the site to allow the creation of 2 distinct internal courtyards with different functions. Another potential vision of the master plan is to demolish the existing School of Engineering building outside of the red line of the site and to sell this land off for a residential development. However, the master plan is only at a concept stage at this stage, and these aspects of the master plan don't form part of this current planning application, which is solely for the erection of the new engineering and construction building. The proposal does not compromise any future delivery of the future courtyards or the redevelopment of the engineering building for residential development. In terms of the principle of the development, the principle of reprovision and enhancement of educational floor space with new upgraded bespoke facilities in this case is supported by the National Planning Policy Framework, London and Haringey Plan Policies. The proposal will enhance the educational experience and future employment prospects of engineering and construction students at Conal. So in terms of design, the building sits largely on the same footprint of the building that it's going to be replacing, with a mainly 4 but also part 5-story scale. The bulk, massing and scale of the building responds sympathetically in relation to the wider built environment. The use of red coloured brick as the principal material with a horizontal stone banding makes an appropriate reference to the heritage buildings along the Town Hall approach, as well as the tower and frontage buildings within the college site. The building would have a strong vertical rhythm with clay red brick forming the principal material, broken up with the horizontal stone banding and sawtooth brick detailing and large elements of glazing that are recessed from the brickwork. So the height and scale of the building would not be visible from the south on the high road, as it would be hidden behind the envelope of the existing college buildings, and will be hidden as when you're viewing it directly from the east by the tower building. The only potential high road visibility would be from the northeast of Tottenham Green, but the established tree cover will largely obscure views of this. It will be visible from Isabel Place, adjacent to the firemen's cottages. The Council Heritage Officer has identified that the building will result in less than substantial harm to surrounding heritage assets, but this harm is outweighed by the public benefit arising from the development in the form of enhanced educational facilities to improve the students' employment and life prospects. So in terms of access and layout of the building, the access will be provided from the main centenary building entrance at the front of the site. So you'd walk through the courtyard and have level access into the proposed building with lift provision, a changing room on the ground floor and disabled WCs on all of the floors. There'll be a double height construction and engineering workshops located on the ground floor with a first floor mezzanine space for independent working, and then more conventional teaching classroom layouts provided on the upper floors. In terms of highways and transport, the site benefits from excellent public transport accessibility with a level of 6. The new building is not proposed to increase student or staff numbers, solely just to provide enhanced facilities for students of the college in the engineering and construction students. 17 car parking spaces in the site will be removed as part of the development. Parking stress survey has been submitted as part of the submission, and transport officers have reviewed this and concluded that there is adequate on-street and external car park capacity in the locality to absorb any offset demand. An additional 20 cycle parking spaces are proposed to be provided within the college site. In terms of servicing, adequate space for servicing has been retained with a turning head added to the rear of the site that would allow for front gear access and egress for vehicles. Overall, transportation officers considered that the construction can be undertaken safely, subject to refining details in a more detailed construction logistics plan, which will be conditioned to be submitted and approved prior to the commencement of any works on the site. In terms of energy and sustainability, the development will achieve a 36% reduction in carbon emissions when measured against the baseline model, and as demonstrated, there would be scope for future connection to a decentralized energy network. On-site renewable energy generation will be provided through solar PV panels, and air source heat pumps would provide heating, cooling, and hot water for the building as well. The carbon offset contribution of £23,085 has been agreed in line with London Plan policy and will be secured via a legal agreement. The development also has incorporated measures to reduce scope for overheating, including efficient lighting, solar glazing, and factoring in the shading that's provided through the existing buildings surrounding the site. The site offers limited scope, unfortunately, for additional greening or biodiversity enhancements at the ground level, but enhancements have been provided by way of an extensive green roof, with bird, bat, and insect boxes also provided at this level. In terms of trying to provide some sort of greening at ground floor level, we've 3 movable temporary planters have been secured to be provided within the courtyard area, which in due course is envisaged will be replaced by a landscape courtyard as part of the wider master plan improvements to the college campus. In terms of employment training and skills, the proposal has strong support from the council's inclusive economy service, who commend the enhanced standard of training and facilities, which will improve the student learning experience, skills and employment prospects at Conel, who are also a strategic partner with the council and the largest further education provider in the borough. An employment and skills plan will form part of the Section 106 agreement in line with council requirements, seeking to maximise future employment and training opportunities for local residents during the construction of the development. So in conclusion, the development will provide enhanced educational facilities for engineering and construction students at Conel. The proposed design, massing and scale of the building makes a satisfactory response to its context and wider constraints, and the less than substantial harm to heritage assets are outweighed by the public benefits arising from the development. Subject to compliance with conditions in a Section 106 agreement, officers recommend approval.
Thank you very much. Do members have any clarification questions of the planning officer, please? Did you have your hand up, Councillor Donovan? Yeah, okay. Right, so councillor O'Donovan, then councillor Emery, and then councillor Bevan.
Okay, thank you. The addendum is related to 77 cycling spaces as opposed to 20. Obviously, you all know that there's a increasing problem with line bikes being parked in Haringey, although there is some mitigation. Are those cycling spaces for just the normal owned bikes, or will there also be a space for line bikes to be parked in that area?
Good evening, Chair.
So Maurice, could you both introduce yourselves, please?
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. My name is Maurice Richards. I'm the head of Transport and Travel.
Hello, my name is Joshua O'Donnell. I'm a senior transport planner.
So in response to the question, Chair, the spaces in question, the 20 spaces, is for the use of the college only. Dockless forms part of a different scheme, and I also head up that scheme, and I know we're having some teething problem during the trial, and we are in the process of actually looking at permanent spaces for areas that we are having problems with dockless. We have had phenomenal usage going into the hundreds of thousands now in terms of usage, and in terms of the complaints we're getting, we are responding to those via our dedicated email address, dockless@haringey.gov.uk, and a commonplace exercise. No, it's not the answer, and we're looking at the top 20 locations for non-compliance and high usage to look at reallocation of road space in terms of permanent spaces, as well as we rolled out another 12 spaces last week on carriageway. So it's a continuous process to improve dockless in the borough. But the answer to the question is that those spaces are solely for students of the facility and are for those attending within the campus, whereas dockless is on pavement.
Thank you. Councillor Emery.
Thank you, Chair. Carbon management team has made some comments on the DEN connection, and I was just wondering, because I can see them from the replied comments, that the acceptance of the DEN connection would no longer be required. I was just wondering if you can give me some updates on how these points were taken into the plan moving forward.
Bipop Pagani, Climate Change Officer at Haringey. So the proposal was to connect with DEN, and they have secured a future proofing mechanism through plans, and rest of the things are secured through planning conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, the applicants might like to respond to these as well. There seems to be some dispute with the police designing out crime, whether you're going to have that apply to your project. The papers seem to indicate some disagreement. And then also, are there going to be sprinklers? Doesn't seem to be clear in the papers. And also it talks about a qualified fire assessor doing a report. In the light of Grenfell, how do you recruit a fire assessor that you can actually trust to actually do a good and competent job? So that's for the applicants or the officers, whoever wishes to answer.
With regard to designing out crime, because it's not a mandatory requirement, and it's an internally located building with secure lines already, we did try and encourage signing up to designing out crime as part of it. And we've put an informative in to encourage it, but we couldn't make a requirement for it, so we couldn't condition it. I didn't quite catch the last part with regards to the fire assessment.
Will there be sprinklers, and will there be a fire assessment? I didn't quite catch. Could you just explain a bit more on the final thing?
Well, it says there needs to be an assessment of all the fire issues, and then it talks about a qualified fire assessor. So I'm sure it will be done, but I'm just questioning, how do you get a qualified fire assessor who's not going to do a bodged job in the light of what's been happening.
Is it okay if we hand over to the applicant to answer that question? They're probably best placed to answer it.
Can the applicant, are there enough chairs? Yeah. Okay.
I'm Louise Morton from Quadrant Town Planning, but I'll just pass the fire question over to John, our architect.
Okay, if you could just introduce yourself, please, for the record.
Pardon? Oh, that's it. Sorry. John Ridgett from Atkins Realis, the architect. In terms of the building, the design has had a fire engineer. So as well as us as architects working through in terms of the means of escape, the materials of the construction, we've also had a separate independent fire engineer who has then reviewed all of our designs in terms of their compliance with building regs, again looking at the means of escape, the use of construction, the spread of fire between this building and other buildings. Part of the reason we've gone for a robust brick construction is that inherently gives you greater fire resistance, and in terms of the specification of the insulation material, which is critical in the cavity closers, etc. So we've gone into a great deal of detail in terms of working through the kind of construction, the means of escape, and then that's been independently reviewed by a fire engineer. When the project goes forward in terms of the kind of construction, then the college themselves, as part of the kind of users for the building, then have a kind of duty in terms of their kind of assessment and it linking with their overall fire strategy. And then that's also obviously subject to review by building control.
So if I continue on that, my name is Neil Scott. I'm the Director of Estates and Facilities for the College Group. My Director of Health and Safety is an ex-brigade officer. So we really are very focused on that. We also have an annual fire risk assessment for each and every building, and all of the remedials that are recommendations are dealt with in year or a planned activity. So we're very focused, and we do understand the challenges around Grenfell.
And the sprinklers?
So in terms of the height of the building falls below a level where sprinklers are required for the building. So in us designing the building, we were deliberate in ensuring that the building was at a height that avoided the kind of sprinklers, but maintained twin fire exits. So you would have seen from the plans, we have fire exits at both north and south end of the building. But yeah, the building comes under the height to the last floor served that requires the use of sprinklers, which is set out in the building regulations.
Councillor Bartlett.
Just to follow up on Councillor Bevan's question, I think this is one for officers. In that 6.12.2, who is then the qualified third party assessor? Is that the person that the applicant's referred to, or is that separate?
So that refers to the London Plan policy requiring that. So that's for the applicant to submit. So they've explained the third party assessor in that respect. At a future stage, when it gets to building regulations, which is separate to planning, obviously, then that is another independent check on that, but that's separate to what's required in London Plan policy.
Can I ask sorry, this is also on the subject of fire. It talks about using the lift as emergency evacuation. Is that a normal, I haven't come across that before. Is that kind of usual practice? And also I remember when you came before us previously and talked about some of the things that it's going to be used for, a lot of it was to do with, tools and equipment. Are there any particular things that you therefore need to put in place because of that kind of added danger, or specifics of that, basically?
I'll answer the first question. So in terms of an escape lift, you can choose not to have escape lift, and you may have seen in buildings sometimes there's a sort of carrier system. It's almost like a kind of trolley that's fitted onto staircases. Those can be, they're kind of designed to take somebody down a staircase. In this particular instance, we've got a means of escape lift, which has battery backup independent, sorry, not battery backup, it has an independent power supply to the lift. So they're designed for means of escape. And that tends to be a more satisfactory, and in terms of equality, better for wheelchair users than essentially being having to take out of their wheelchair to be kind of manhandled, and it relies on somebody to physically come and get there, and they have to have the call point, have to wait there while everybody else is escaping. So actually, we find it's a much more inclusive and a better solution for those people that aren't able to exit using the staircase. On the second point, I think that's more, there wasn't, in terms of the building, particular things other than we have to go through for the building regs. But Neil, you might want to touch on terms of how risk in terms of your staff. Obviously, there's risk assessments and there's all those things about the tools that they use in the space, but it doesn't have a particular impact in the design of the building, other than we have to design in accordance to building regulations and those aspects.
I think you've just answered the question.
Right, there we go.
Any more questions? Councillor O'Donovan.
Thank you. This relates to the conservation officer's comments, and I think it was repeated earlier today that the less than substantial harm to heritage assets are considered outweighed by public benefits, and it's just a question in relation to what are the benefits. And as you know, the outlook from Tottenham Green of that area is much loved. Unfortunately, there is a 1980s tower block, 8-story tower block that obscures that view. I know this new building will only be 5 stories, and in the future there will be a replacement of a smaller block. It is related to what the public benefit is, because I think this application, although we consider the importance of what colleges do, they are a commercial organisation, and I understand that there won't be any new staff involved in this, presumably no new students either. So what is the public benefit that's mentioned to be outweighing the historical damage, not they use the word damage, the harm of the heritage assets? Thank you.
I'll start with that if I can, Councillor Donovan. So we did quite a lot of work at the pre-app stage and submitted with the planning application in terms of views analysis and how the building might sit behind the conservation area and the listed buildings. And we did, as a result of that, reduce the height by 1 floor. In terms of the harm that's been identified, I think it's been accepted that it's at the low end of harm, if you want to put it like that. It does sit behind the tower. We acknowledge that the building would be glimpsed through the gaps between the listed buildings, but I think it's generally agreed that given the reduced height, that would be a less than substantial level of harm. In terms of benefits, I think I'll just pass over to Neil in terms of the education benefits of what we're doing here.
In short,
Could you come through the chair, please, if you're asking questions? Because I just want to bring Roland in. Is there do you want to add something to that, Roland?
You're sort of asking about the benefits as well. So, I mean, in terms of the benefits, it's providing a much enhanced facility in replacement of what's actually there on site. The facilities are quite dated. The students at some points have to do some of their work outdoors. So during the winter time, that's probably not the best sort of arrangement. There's going to be specific bespoke facilities for them to carry out their work in. And the college itself is the largest further education provider in the borough. It's got strong links with the council. So they'll be looking in the future to create better linkages between the college and local businesses. and they'll be working within, there'll be a green construction sort of element to the curriculum they're going to be providing, which obviously serves to deal with the climate change issue that we're dealing with. So in that sense, I think it's a strong benefit that outweighs the less than substantial harm affecting the heritage assets.
Just to add that is spelled at 6.420 to 6.422. Just it takes you through the full consideration of those issues that Roland has summed up there.
Well, I just want to, did you want to come in now? I've got Councillor, and then I'll bring you in, Councillor.
I think from my perspective, this is about the youth of your boroughs and your wards, about the college's ability to provide teaching and learning that reflects the skills that are going to be required for employment going further. A good example is that we have just signed a contract around turbine blade repairs, and we need that double height facility to get something that size in. And those are the types of roles that are coming forward. So this is about employability, it's about up-to-date skills, and it's about putting a facility in place for the long term that will support your local residents.
Okay, I'll bring you in next, Councillor Donovan, then I'll bring you in, Councillor.
Very briefly, and thanks for your both answers, all three answers. And I can understand from the site visit we made on Friday, the enhanced facilities for young people when they're learning these skills. I suppose looking at the whole thing, and this isn't something that's actually coming up today, it's a wider master plan. The carbuncle on this whole site, unfortunately, is this eight-storey building, which it looks as though it got planning permission back in the 1970s. As part of the ongoing master plan, I know you're going to be thinking about demolishing another building. Will that eight-storey building, is that possible to be improved in any way? Thank you.
I mean, in terms of this application, we can't really sort of take that into consideration, and it's nothing I can really add in terms of being the planning officer on the application with regards to that. I can pass it back to the applicant if they have any ideas about future improvements to the tower building.
I will. So you're going to respond to this one?
Just to clarify, thank you, Chair, that yes, it's not part of this application. It will remain for the foreseeable future, mainly because it provides very valuable floor space. We accept it's a remnant from the 1970s. There may be some options in terms of cladding. I don't really want to go down that route at this stage, but at the moment, it does provide very valuable floor space that will remain for the foreseeable future.
And if I can just come in, Councillor O'Donovan, to finish off that point. And yeah, it's an important point you raised, not for this particular application, but we can have a look through the local plan area-based policies to see if that can talk something about this building and currently sort of detracting from the good environment. And also we have something called conservation area appraisal and management plans, which this is just adjacent to the conservation area, and that can highlight buildings that detract from that. So through planning policy, we could perhaps take that point away and have a look how we can highlight opportunities for improvement in the long-term future.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Thank you.
I'm going back actually to the sprinklers because so I totally understand your point that you're not required to have sprinklers because it's not high enough. However, is it hugely expensive to put sprinklers in? Because I was thinking it probably isn't hugely expensive, and surely it's safer regardless. Surely even in this building, if sprinklers came down, if there was a fire, we'd be better off. So why not?
Is this? Can I just bring Robbie McLaughlin, please?
Sure. I think we do just need to stick tightly to the policy on this, that that's not in the scope of the London Plan policy on fire safety. So they've satisfied that in terms of putting forward a third party assessed fire strategy that satisfies that. There's always other measures they could include, but if that's not required by building regs, then we can't compel them through planning either to do that. So I think that's beyond the scope of the policy, really.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring you in a minute, Councillor. I just want to ask, what's the green roof going to consist of? And you talk about bird boxes, which is great. Is there such a thing as pigeon-proof bird boxes? Because while I don't want to be unkind to pigeons, I do think we've got plenty of pigeons, and it would be nice to see some other birds. So I don't know who would answer that, and then I'll bring you in, Councillor Emery. I don't know if anyone can answer that, but really, what's the green roof going to consist of? And is it going to be a nice high green roof that people can see from, the ground floor?
No, it's a short answer to the last question. It's an extensive green-brown roof. So what we're trying to do with the roof of the building is both deal with biodiversity net gain, but also in terms of renewable energy, in terms of the PV. So what in this particular instance, because you're not overlooking it, so in certain instances in education establishments where you might overlook it, you might have a kind of green roof as an amenity. Here, because we've got the PV actually acts as a sort of shelter as well. So the brown roofs that go with that actually help enhance biodiversity. So you get more bugs, you get more but you get more bugs, more life within the roof because of that kind of shelter. So you tend to, with those kind of roofs, not only will you have planting, but you'll have some kind of stone, you'll have some bits of timber that you'll locate up there, which can then rot down, which actually also enhances the biodiversity. So it's not something to look at, it's something with a kind of purpose to increase the biodiversity, and that works with a green roof, with PV. So we've specified a specific system that works with PV and a green-brown roof. It's a recognised kind of product. The two things go together. It's not like we've got a roof and then we've decided to add the PV. It's a sort of recognised approach.
Okay, and the bird boxes?
I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on pigeon-proof bird boxes, but there are particular in terms of the size of the boxes and the holes and those kind of things that you would specify. So again, because this is a recognised thing that happens on multiple projects, there are actually suppliers that specialise in providing these, and sometimes they're independent, and sometimes they're actually built into the, so in some of the bricks you can kind of design that into the brickwork as well.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Emery.
Hey, Chair. I've seen some questions online in regards to the site access point being quite a difficult spot, with some concerns over nearby school children using the site. Can you give some clarification on site access and safe use of HGVs will be managed as part of the application?
Thank you. Yes, the site access is as currently shown. It's the service access road. It is acknowledged that that is also a bus lane and a cycle route and quite a wide pavement for pedestrians. What we've sought to do in this application is to try and ensure that vehicles can enter in a forwards gear, turn around within the site and exit in a forwards gear. That currently doesn't happen at the moment. It's a bit ad hoc. Some deliveries, for example, do reverse in, and we acknowledge that that is a manoeuvre that really needs to be eradicated, and we've discussed that with TfL and with your transport officers. So by removing the 17 car parking spaces that are currently within the service yard, we're creating a space that enables deliveries and other vehicles to come in, turn around and exit in a forwards gear, hopefully creating a much safer access.
One follow-up. I saw some questions online in terms of maybe having a person reversing in and forwarding in HGV lorries. Is that something you can look into, like a site manager to guide them in? Is that something that's considered?
Is that in terms of construction? Sorry. Yes, we've agreed to put together a construction management plan. We have a contractor on board at the moment that's looking at that. There will be some lorries that are potentially up to 12, 16 metres that will need to be guided in. We're looking at doing a road safety audit, but at the moment we've put together some indicative plans that show where marshals would stand, for example, out on Town Hall approach, so that those larger vehicles that will be booked in at a certain time can be, brought on site safely.
Okay, right, thank you. Okay, all right, so no more questions. Right, so we'll now move to the recommendation. I'd like to ask Robbie McKnocker to confirm the recommendation with a summary of any changes.
Thank you, Chair. So no changes made to the recommendation. It is as set out in the report and the addendum, and that is to grant planning permission subject to conditions under section 106. Thank you.
Okay, so all those in favour, please show of the recommendation. That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the applicants. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to item 9, and that is 18 West Road and Unit West Mews. It's pages 147 to 278 in the pack. I won't read out the proposal because that's also in the pack. The recommendation is to grant. And who's oh right, and Sarah, sorry, I'm moving a bit quick. Just let Sarah set up. Good evening, Sarah.
Good evening, councillors. The proposal is for the redevelopment of 18 West Road and Unit 4 West Mews, comprising of 2 warehouses, use classes B2 and B8, with ancillary mezzanine floor space and associated landscaping, yard, parking, access, and infrastructure. This slide shows the aerial view of Unit 1 on the northwest corner of Brentwood Road and West Road, and Unit 2 on West Road to the west. Please note that the area to be redeveloped includes existing substations as noted in the addendum. Please use the site location plan in Appendix 2 of the report. This slide shows both sites surrounding uses. Unit 1 comprising of the old Redcorn site to the northwest, which will be redeveloped as part of the proposal, and Unit 2 was formerly occupied by Michael's Pita Bread Bakery to the west. There's also residential properties to the east of Unit 1 and a series of sport pitches fronting Willoughby Lane. The area is predominantly residential, industrial in character. This site is designated as Brentwood Road Strategic Industrial Location, SIL, and is designated as a local employment area. This slide shows the proposed master plan for Unit 1 and Unit 2. The proposal for Unit 1 is for the demolition of 2 existing single-story warehouse buildings, erection of building comprising of 5,566 square meters, positioned on the corner of Brentwood Road and West Road. The building will be 12 meters in height. Flexible internal space is used for B2 and B8 storage and distribution, with office for ancillary use and raised storage mezzanine. The unit will have a provision for cycle parking and refuse storage, including landscaping provision, which will be discussed further in the presentation. In terms of Unit 2, the floor space will be approximately 1,100 square meters. It will be 10 meters in height. A dedicated cycle parking, storage, and refuse will be located to the front elevation, including landscaping provision to be discussed further in the presentation. In terms of this slide, it shows the Unit 1 with office level on the upper floors. This unit will incorporate a balcony area at first floor level facing to the north. Two substations constructed in brick are being proposed, however, will be determined under a separate application. This slide shows the CGI of Unit 2. This CGI shows the proposed new buildings in comparison to the surrounding buildings. To the south on the corner with Brentwood Road and Dyson Road is a recently approved logistic building at 175 Willoughby Lane, which is under construction. This slide shows landscaping for Unit 1, which comprises of ground cover planting, about 14 mature trees, native hedge and mixed flower rich shrubs. Additional trees will be planted on the street. This will be secured via a Section 106 contribution. This slide shows landscaping for Unit 2, which comprises of 4 trees at the front, native hedges, and ground cover planting. Considerations. Principle of the development, design and appearance, the impact on amenity of adjoining occupiers, parking and highways, energy and climate change. The principle of the development is acceptable as the site is located within a designated strategic industrial land, SIL. The redevelopment of site will result in a net increase in internal floor space, thereby supporting the intensification of existing employment site. The proposed development will provide jobs for local residents, boost the economy, and support the council regeneration aims. Design principles. In design terms, the design layout of the building will be attractive, contemporary, finished in durable materials. Glazing has been incorporated in all office floors. The height of the building is approximately 12 meters for Unit 1 and 10 meters for Unit 2, with first floor mezzanine floors. This slide shows the floor layout of Unit 1, which will have a B2 and B8 warehouse element to be used for storage and distribution, and office for ancillary use. There will also be a raised storage. This is the floor plan for Unit 2 to be used for storage and distribution, or B8 use and office use. On this slide shows sections for Unit 1. The height of Unit 1 has been reduced by the removal of parapets to reduce impact on the neighboring properties on Willoughby Lane. Transport and parking. In terms of transport and parking, the site has a PTEL of 2, which is considered to be poor access. In terms of Unit 1, a total of 26 car parking spaces, which will include 1 reserved for blue badge holder and 4 spaces for electrical vehicle charging facilities. In terms of Unit 2, a total of 6 parking spaces, which will include 1 blue badge holder and 2 spaces for electrical charging facilities. 40 spaces for Unit 1 in terms of cycle parking, 40 spaces for Unit 1, 34 long stay and 6 short stay, and 18 spaces for Unit 2, and 12 long stays and 6 short stays. In terms of HGV lorries, it is important to point out that there's no significant material change versus the existing operation. The site is within an industrial area. Secondly, all servicing will now be taken on plot rather than on the road as currently, therefore improving safety and amenity for pedestrians. The proposed layouts facilitates HGV access to both units, with vehicles able to enter and exit the highway in forward gear. Finally, please note that this will be, of course, dependent on the future occupiers. In terms of amenity, impact on amenity, we'll be looking at daylight, sunlight, privacy, overlooking, outlook, noise, and disturbance. The main issue raised by local residents was daylight and sunlight, privacy, overlooking, outlook, noise, and construction noise. A daylight and sunlight report was submitted with the application to address the daylight and sunlight issues raised by the neighboring properties. The parapet of Unit 1 has been removed, thereby reducing the height of Unit 1 by approximately 2 meters. Finally, in terms of the character, the proposed buildings will be similar in those already approved in the area. In terms of privacy and overlooking and outlook, again, the height of the building has already been reduced, as I said, on the boundary with Willoughby Lane. Therefore, the impact on the residential properties will be reduced. A 2.4 meter fence is also proposed, which will provide some screening. In terms of noise from the mechanical service plants, these will be controlled by a suitable worded planning condition. In terms of dust and noise relating to demolition and construction works, this will be a temporary impacts that will be typically controlled by a non-planning legislation. A demolition and construction methodology for the redevelopment will be controlled by a condition. In terms of dust and pollution and construction noise during construction phase, this will be attached, a condition will be attached also. Energy and sustainability. The development is proposing living roofs on top of the bike storage sheds, solar panels, and air heat pumps. The development achieves a reduction of 122% carbon dioxide emissions on site, which is supported in principle. The development is zero carbon development. On this slide, it shows separation distances from the back of the houses of Willoughby Lane to the back unit of Unit 1, which will be approximately 32.8 meters. And there's a distance of 20.56 meters from the back gardens to the houses. Therefore, it is considered the proposed development will not have a significant impact on the residential properties on Willoughby Lane. On this slide, it just shows what I've just said previously. The rear of Unit 1, it shows the trees that will be planted. It shows the length of the gardens on Willoughby Lane. In terms of Section 106 heads of terms, we've got carbon mitigation, 2 commercial travel plans, monitoring contributions, employment initiatives, construction, logistics and management plan, a Section 278 highways works, active travel improvements, parking management contribution, tree planting and monitoring contributions. The recommendation is to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions, please? So, Councillor Ibrahim?
Yes. Thank you. I'm a bit concerned about the representation there because the road isn't as wide as that. Obviously, there's a lot of on-street parking at the moment, but even so, for example, the way it's illustrated there, there's the white lines down the middle of the road, and you can see that there's a car, and there could easily be another car or a lorry that could drive past without either one having to move for each other. It's nothing like that. It's quite narrow and obviously made worse by the on-street parking, but even so. But firstly, there is no white line down the middle of the road, so there isn't that clear separation. But also, I'm just concerned if you go to the other illustration, the size of the well, it's not really there, but in the other one that we saw, there was really large. I mean, there are lorries that come down there now, but okay, yeah, you can see those lorries, the two nearer the top of that image. They're very large articulated lorries that will be coming round to roundabout, and my concern, I suppose, probably for the traffic officers, is the added pressure that's going to have on that roundabout with those with the type of deliveries that we're talking about. And you know, the traffic seems to flow there at the point that we were there, but I can see at certain hotspots in the day it could be a problem. And obviously you've got 2 bus routes that run along there as well. And my concern is that because that's not really an accurate representation of what it looks like, that in reality it's a step up to the types of lorries that are accessing it at the moment. And obviously that on-street parking is to do with the fact that a lot of those businesses that are in the surrounding areas, like cash and carry type places where people kind of go drive. You can't get a bus and leave with a bag. You know, you drive there, and it's gonna potentially cause problems. So I suppose my question is that there isn't as much information as I would have liked to have seen in there. You know, there is a lot of information about parking, but not so much about traffic management.
Sure, Chair, if I can come in.
Switch off your microphone.
Sure, Chair, if I can come in on that point. So there's a couple of things here we must first take into consideration. This is in an existing highways, this in an existing industrial area. I think in terms of this section and the roundabout, the roundabout not only serve Brentwood Road, but it also serve Rosebery Industrial Estate to the far end of Willoughby Lane. So there are established patterns of traffic and usage. The first thing is there is no weight restriction on this road, so all vehicles can use it. It's public highway. In the terms of this development proposal, I wouldn't go to a CGI in terms of the highways element of it. So there's a section 278 agreement, which is attached to this agreement in terms of how we design stuff, and that will include a topo to get the exact road width. I agree with you that the carriageway is narrow, and if you look currently, there's half footway parking that takes place, and that's so we can get the traffic to and fro from the development. In terms of a planning element of it, what we're looking at is granting permission to this industrial unit going to make the situation any worse than currently exists? I'm going to say no. And the reason being is that currently, or before on that site, what was taking place is that HGVs would show up, park on the pavement, and they will actually literally dismantle cars on the pavement. Whereas this proposal, what it does include for is off highways servicing and delivery. So what we're looking at is the turning movements in and out of the site. And that's where the 278 agreement comes in terms of making sure we have the appropriate design in terms of turning movements for HGV. Some of that information has already been included in the transport assessment. I think when we do our review of all this, we look at all the details in terms of the number of trips. We also have a service and delivery plan attached to this to make sure we can look at consolidated deliveries to reduce the amount of movements. Then we go into the detail. Can the highways accommodate that in terms of the movement in and out of the site? And this is where the technical details in terms of post-planning committee comes in, and where we look at the design and we go through a stage 1 and stage 2 road safety audit. That's independent of the developer and the council to make sure it's safe. And then we'll also look at implementing that. After we implement it, we go to stage 3. That's after we've done the works. So we are reasonably happy in terms of the number of trips generated by the site. We are happy in terms of the initial layout of the crossovers, because all the servicing will take place off the carriageway. So it's more the turn of movement into the site. Can they get in and out in 4 gear? So we're happy with that. So I think what remains is then how do we make sure we manage any unexpected parking that may arise from this development proposal, which may means we need additional signage and lineage and enforcement. And we've also secured a contribution as part of that, if you go back to the heads of term, which looks at parking management within the local area to deal with any unexpected parking which may impact on the free flow of traffic on the highways network. So we're very comfortable from a highways and transport planning point of view that, considering this is an existing highways network which currently serve HGVs within this industrial area, so it's not a new proposal in terms of we routing HGVs to a residential area. That principle already exists. It's more to do how we service this site, which we say we have a safeguard in terms of the 278. We have the safeguard in terms of parking management contribution to design that properly. So that is why we have recommended that this application from a transport and highways point of view is acceptable.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. Any further questions, please? Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, when I visited, at the side of one of these sites, there seems to be 2 tatty buildings, a white one, and at the end, a couple of metal type constructions. It looks as if they're staying. If you can just tell me that, because it's a shame, because it would have been nice if they'd been incorporated into the development. And then the highway contribution, will it be enough to repave that whole road, both sides? Because that road needs proper, nice paving done. And then my last point is, I'm really pleased to see the QRP panel looking at these industrial sites because we get a great improvement. And the site that's been mentioned at 175 Willoughby Lane, which is basically being built, looks really attractive. So I'm really pleased that the QRP panel is looking at these sites. But if I'm assuming I've got this wrong. When you look at that design picture, design principles, it's all showing white. It's not white render, is it? It's going to be brick, isn't it? Yeah, I thought so, because I've had a heart attack if it was white render. Yeah, I'm sure it says it in here, but I probably missed it. Last point, it mentions fencing. Can we have some attractive fencing on this development and none of that industrial stainless steel prison type fencing that we see everywhere? Can we get that as a enhanced condition?
So Richard, and then Sarah, I'll bring you in. Richard, please.
Yes, hope that works. Hi, yes, thanks, Councillor Bevan. I'll take them in reverse order if that's okay. The fencing, we've got to agree that fairly transparent fencing, the same thing as they're currently erecting on Willoughby Road, 175 Willoughby Road. It's not white render, but it's not brickwork either. It's a metal cladding system on this proposal. But I'm happy with the quality of the metal cladding proposal. It contains a variety of different colours and sizes that will have I think, a pleasing appearance and not too monolithic, but fairly varied, whilst being very contemporary and within the corporate image that Valor, the developers, want to project. Yeah, and thank you for the comments about 175 and the QRP looked at it. I don't know about the other issues which are to do with the highways or the existing buildings. What I do know about the sites is that there are existing buildings on the whole of the northern, the larger of the two sites, but which will all be demolished. And but the southern and the smaller of the two sites is currently cleared. The previous buildings have already been demolished. There is a site in between the two that's not part of this development. That may be what you were thinking of. That's in separate ownership.
Sarah, did you want to come in, please?
I really don't have anything to add apart from what Richard has said, that some of the buildings are in separate ownership, so they're not part of the development, especially the building in the middle. And then in terms of the fencing, as Richard said, we've also conditioned the materials, so we will make sure that it's not a prison cell.
Yeah,
so the metal cladding type stuff, will it discolour over time? Because brick stays the same forever, more or less, but is that metal cladding can it retain its looks, or will it become grotty and dusty and dirty and you know?
You can't prevent it getting dirty, I suppose, over the years, but it would take quite a long time. It would stay pretty clean. It would be pretty self-cleaning, I would expect. Metal cladding normally does. I mean, I think the way metal cladding becomes grotty looking when it does is when it gets impacted and damaged. But I think it's more robust than traditional past metal cladding, and I think this developer will look after this.
Maurice.
Sure, Chair. The final bit with council was regarding the amount of money for the highways works. So the highways works will be secured by a Section 278 agreement. What that means is that we will design the scheme. Our engineers will then estimate how much the scheme costs, and that will be based on our rates and the agreed scope of work. So the developer will then pay whatever that costs to deliver the 278 works. So that's not capped. That's not currently costed within this agreement because this is a separate legal agreement, which means they pay whatever the scheme costs for the agreed spec of the 278 works.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Worrell.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask, in the stakeholder responses, in the response from carbon management, it's noted that there's a substantial kind of estimated carbon reduction, which is welcome, but there was a few kind of discrepancies or inaccuracies in how some of the data that was provided and how that was all calculated that might affect the overall figure. And I think this is from their comment in August. They were waiting for a few more clarifications. So I just wondered if the officers could give some more detail on that and whether that's kind of all been resolved and whether they're content with the new calculation.
The discrepancies on the energy modeling hasn't been resolved. But what we have done is we have a pre-commencement condition to submit a revised energy statement. So these are just to ensure that the modeling is done correctly. Also to say that the principles and the building fabric efficiencies and the 260 kilowatt peak solar panels, these are all supported, and these will make sure that the carbon reduction is very high. There is a chance that it can still be a zero carbon development. And if it's not a zero carbon development, then we do have a mechanism to get the carbon offset contribution through S106 agreement. And yeah, that's it. We have asked for the revised energy statement just to make sure the calculations are done correctly. But in principles, whatever they have proposed, it's highly supported.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donovan.
Okay, thank you. The background papers to this application quite rightly mention our policy in relation to supporting local employment. This is the council's policy, supporting local employment, regeneration aims, and also increasing job density and helping to meet Haringey's employment needs. I'm pleased in the heads of terms, there's quite a lot of detail in relation to employment initiatives, presumably during the building, apprenticeships, no less than 20% of local labour, etc. And hopefully some of the students who have been taught bricklaying and electrical work will take part in the building a bit. But then after the building, it's not clear what these two buildings will be used for, how many people will live or work there, and is there a commitment from the company to employ a reasonable amount of local people? Thank you.
I'll just take that one, Councillor. So we do have provision in our planning obligations SPD to secure end user jobs, but that's where we have that lined up. And in this case, that's not clear. That they'll be speaking to occupiers after they have planning permission. To impose those obligations can then restrict their ability to secure tenants, which could work in reverse and potentially inhibit local employment because it might put off potential tenants. So we haven't imposed that in this case, where we've seen things like the Tottenham Hotspur Hotel or other hotel uses where the end user is coming forward with the application. We have secured those obligations, but we just don't have that position here.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Mark.
Just a small thing. In the addendum, it says it corrects the name of the applicant. Is that a change or is that a misprint in the original papers? Has the applicant changed?
No, sorry, then the applicant hasn't changed. It's still the same. It's just the way it was put in the document submitted. So it's an error, but the applicant hasn't changed.
Councillor Branham.
In the employment, in the work people who will be working here, do we have under sort of Haringey plan certain sort of rules about the terms and conditions of the people employed, or is that beyond our scope?
That would be beyond the scope of planning, yeah. So always looking for high quality development. We have worked through the pre-app process to bring in some enhancements like recreational space and balconies. So obviously those are then available for the occupants and their employees to use. But in terms of the terms, I think that's pretty dictated by law rather than through planning.
Thank you, Councillor Warren.
Thanks. It was just to pick up on Councillor Donovan's point and the response you gave. I just wondered if you could give a bit more of the policy detail about that? Because obviously, if one of the benefits of this type of development is to increase employment space, you'd sort of assume that as a borough, we were trying to drive that for local people, local businesses. So, I mean, is it to do with kind of wider London plans, why we wouldn't always necessarily specify that? Just wondering like what the argument is for it, therefore definitely benefiting our borough and our priorities if we're not specifying about the local aspect.
Yeah, so we have the obligations on the construction, so those are built in, so local people will get the chance and priority to work in the construction. We just don't have that built into our planning obligations, SPD, where there's no end user known, and I suppose we have to look at the sort of designation, which is strategic industrial land here. So that's a policy that drives employment in these areas and puts that use ahead of any other potential uses. And then there follows an assumption that benefits Haringey because the jobs are in Haringey, therefore they're more likely to go to local people. And if we have those opportunities, local people have a better chance of getting them. That's as much as really we can steer this in this case. And that's the sort of policy basis for supporting this and the benefits it should bring.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Right. Okay, so we'll now move to the recommendation. I'd like to ask Robbie McLaughlin to confirm the recommendation with a summary of any changes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So no amendments to the recommendation. So that's as set out in the report in the addendum, which is to grant planning permission subject to conditions under section 106.
Okay, so the recommendation is to support, is to grant. So all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to item 10. That's update on major proposals, which is pages 279 to 292. Do members have any clarification questions, please, on any of the major proposals? Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, I've got 3 queries. So on page 281, it refers to Beryl Yard. I just want to remind the officers, it was agreed a long time ago that the replacement windows would be replaced in the development with original looking type windows. So I'm assuming that's going to happen. And then 284 on the Draper's Arm houses. I know there's been a lot of controversy about that site. I'm wondering, have the officers checked out, because these arm houses normally have historical legal obligations to provide that type of housing, whether that issue has been checked. And then on page 291, it talks about the Lockkeeper's Cottage, which was passed years ago. And now it looks as if it's going to be a flipping tower block on the corner of that site. So I'm just wondering about that.
Thanks for those. So the permission for the latest development at Beryl House did have upgrades to those windows to reflect the heritage of the building. So planning permission has not yet been granted as we work through this section 106 for that. So we hope that once that's issued, they will go ahead with that and make those changes. But at the moment, that's still going through the motions. On Edmondson Close, we have looked into this issue, so there's no covenants on the land, and we've checked the title deeds and seen that, which I think is possibly quite unusual, but there's nothing we found that restricts that. But we are working with them to potentially secure some grant funding for affordable housing there. So we're hoping for a good outcome in the end on that. Because the initial proposal was for purely private housing, but it remains to be seen in terms of viability there. And on Lockkeeper's Cottage, we have seen the pre-app proposals for that, and they are substantially taller and probably, I think, we fair to say, a tower block. We've not had a follow-up pre-app on that to establish a firm position on that. So it remains to be seen whether the applicant will come back on that or not.
Councillor Warren? No, okay. Councillor Ibrahim? Is that sorry?
Yes, so still an ongoing hiatus there. We raised a number of concerns with those proposals, including the re-provision of the warehouse living and the provision for the existing community there. The applicant has taken that feedback and rejigged their applicant team recently. So they have approached us again to discuss that. We've set out a way forward and reiterated our concerns to them, and we're waiting for a response.
Councillor Emery?
Highgate School, I know we've had some meetings a few months back, but just wondering if we had any updates on where they're going to go next with that, or if you had any further things you can give me an idea on.
Yes, so we haven't heard the sort of next steps following those feedback sessions. So we've been looking at some of the technical issues on that, but we're not moving forward in earnest on that just yet.
Okay, thank you. Well, okay, so we're now on to item 11, applications determined under delegated powers, and this is pages 293 to 336. Any questions, any clarification questions or questions? No, okay, all right, thank you. So we're on to item 9, and there are no items of urgent business, and item 13 is date of the next meeting, which is the 8th of October. So thank you very much, everybody, and good night.